I think the first time I saw it was, I think you were watching a Xander Hall video, and he like mentioned that he was using his PayPal account as just his bank account.
Yeah.
And like, you're missing out on interest. You're missing out on. I feel like I'm like, okay, if you don't have any money, when I didn't have any money, I felt like I did everything I could to make sure to save anything I could. And it seems like other people do nothing. And like that your credit card, you need it to build credit. It's cash back. If you buy from Amazon, why would you not have an Amazon card that gets you 5% back on everything? And then if you try and run a balance, why would you ever pay interest? Like, if you don't have enough money to buy it, how are you gonna have money to buy it with additional interest? Like, I don't.
Yeah, the problem is that like wealth begets wealth, and wealthy behaviors beget wealth, and like poor behaviors beget poverty, and that's just, yeah, it's all kind of like cyclical, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah, but didn't you say that like that you came from like you said your parents don't have the best financial, and you even said your siblings don't, but you do.
Yeah, I don't know. I just got lucky. For some reason, my brain works a little bit differently. I guess I don't know why or how, but yeah, I got lucky there. It's kind of like, you see, like there are some people who like their parents treat them horribly, and they grow up and they're like, I'm never gonna do that to my kid, and they become like the best parents ever. And they're like the stories where it's like, yeah, like my parents did this, so I vowed I would never do this to my child. And like, oh, it's such a good friend. And then you've got other people who are like, yeah, I beat the shit out of my kid because that's the example that was set to me by my parents. I don't know why some people go one way and some people go the other. It seems like some people are influenced like in the opposite direction of negative shit they see growing up, and other people are influenced in like the positive direction. They end up doing the thing. I don't know why. I don't know how what determines one way or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like the thing is I don't know how to fix it as well. Like when you're talking to someone and they're facing these issues, like what do you? You seem to be able to reach people in ways that I'm like confused by. That like you're able to understand their positions, and there's just people that I don't understand. And that's one of them, which just says like you could make your situation better, but they complain about it as well. They complain about their situation while also doing everything in their possible to make sure they stay in that position.
I mean, if it makes you feel better, for the vast majority of people, I probably don't reach them. Like, they'll get advice, and they'll say, like, oh, yeah, that's a really good idea. But then they never actually implement it, and they just go back to doing dumb shit. That's probably most people, right? Have you ever heard of the show Kitchen Nightmares?
He sounds, yeah, I think I've seen
Gordon Ramsay, where he goes, like, I think, like, 94% of those restaurants ended up failing after the show. So, I mean, like, yeah. The reality is that people sometimes think that individuals are the product of epic decisions that you make throughout your life. Kind of like in movies, there's like one or two epic, you know, like the hero rejects the call and he does the montage. Like you'll hear like a couple things and that's the defining points of people's lives. The reality is you're actually defined by like a million different small actions that accumulate to create the person you are. People are just a collection of their habits, their friends, their environment. And yeah, and I mean, like if a person is really poor and they're making dog shit financial decisions, they've probably been making those for a long time, and they're probably going to continue to make those. So it sucks, but yeah, I feel like there's like this sounds really bad. This might be my most like libertarian take or whatever the or conservative take, but I feel like there is a non-trivial amount of poverty that could be solved by poor people adopting better financial habits. When I say non-trivial, I mean like maybe 15 to 25% of like poverty could be solved if you could just imbue poor people with better financial understanding, unironically.
Yeah, no, I mean, I generally agree with that, I just, it feels like, because it's something that you can fix. It's something there's things that are outside your control and that you should try and use everything within your control. I guess I was raised the idea that says, like, you want to feel like you're in control of your life. Even if you're not, you want to act as though you are, so that way you're at least covering all the things you can do. Yeah. And that I don't want to resign myself to being, like, it's like when I was taught to drive, you go, that driving isn't just about not hitting other people, it's about making sure other people don't hit you. That if you get in a car accident, even if it's someone else's fault, you should be thinking to yourself, how could I have avoided that? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, as I learned, that most people seem to just blame everyone else for everything.
Yeah, that's, I mean, what are you going to do? Yeah, what are you going to do? If you're poor, you should never have a credit card. You shouldn't. Never do payday loan. There's no reason ever. Don't ever use like layaway. Never do that. If your car payment is bigger than like $300 a month, you're probably f***ing up if you're poor. Yeah, if you ever DoorDash, Uber Eats, or whatever, if you're not wealthy, you're probably making a big mistake. Like, yeah, these are things that like every single person could implement in their life and not fuck up. Yeah, don't have kids before you're ready. You know, abortion, contraception. Yeah. But
even things like payments, I don't know. And again, maybe this is something unique about me, that I get stressed out at the idea of having payments. Like, I like having my car paid off. I don't like having something going, yeah, I have debts that I need to pay off. You were reading something about people who had like $150,000 in personal loans. Yeah. Like, I've known people who drive, like, and even, because the thing is, it's not relegated to poor people. I've known people with plenty of money, but the problem is they spend, like, they're making $10,000-$15,000 a month, but they're spending $10,000 to $15,000. They're taking on burdens, like monthly burdens, to the tune of $10,000 to $15,000 a month, and that they're fucked fucked. Like if anything goes wrong, you're fucked in those situations. It's like you're assuming everything goes right, and then when something goes wrong, suddenly you're on Reddit going, "Someone please help me budget. I'm an idiot," and everything's like they had a kid, so suddenly our thing went down, but your monthly expenses don't track your like.
No, that's usually how it works. So poor people should live worse lives. I'm too lazy to do the math for you, and you can go figure it out on your own time. But if you're quote unquote living a worse life, like credit helps you live far beyond your means. If I had to guess, the math works out for probably about 1 or 2 years. Credit will help you live far beyond your means, and then the rest of your life you're a slave to interest, and you're actually living below your means. Believe it or not, credit and loans and all of that are actually reducing your standard of living while giving you the illusion that you're increasing your standard of living. Because the very first time you have access to credit, that's $3,000 that you maybe never had before, and then you go to buy something and your standard of living is actually elevated from where it could have been. But the problem is, after a year or 2 years, now that you've paid off more in interest than even the principal balance, now when you're looking around, now you're actually dragging your standard of living. It could be this, but you're making interest payments, but then you get credit again, and now you're like, okay, well, my standard of living could be this low because I'm getting dragged down by interest payments. Now I've got even more credit. And what the credit does is the credit gives you the illusion that you're actually boosting your standard of living. But once you've been floating interest payments for about a year or two, your standard of living is actually permanently depressed for the rest of your debt life. But it's hard to see that because of the little mathematical games. It's almost like an implied pot odds in poker. Another thing, but you're basically bullshitting yourself consistently to thinking that you're like actually increasing your standard of living, right? Like if we say that we have like income, and we say that, like, let's say that this is like a poor person's standard of living, would you measure it at this line? What credit helps you do is credit helps you borrow so that at this point, you get to have this standard of living. But what happens is as you borrow the credit, right, your standard of living, as you start making interest payments, eventually it's going to catch up to normal because of interest payments, but then it's going to start to drop down here because now you're paying off interest, which is money on things you don't even get to own. And now you bullshit yourself into more credit, and now it feels like you have like I'm sorry, at some point what you start bullshitting yourself into is this, like maybe you do this, but then it's going to be like this, right? Now you take credit to get back to where your standard of living should be, then it drops, and then eventually you're going to be taking credit, and now you're not even at your normal standard of living. And again, if you integrate both these curves, like in the beginning stages here, the person on credit is actually living a better life than the person that doesn't use credit because he's got more cash to spend. But eventually, so much money is being dumped into interest payments, and interest. Remember, interest is just setting your money on fire, right? Interest is I want something in the future now. And once you get it now, your future life is discounted as a result of that, right? I think it's called time discounting. I think it's a term in finance. But anyway, regardless, yeah. I guess, yeah. Okay,
but
sorry.
Your advice of saying that don't give any, don't take a credit card. The thing is, credit cards can be used to improve your standard of living in terms of like saying, well, again, cash back. 5% off everything on Amazon isn't something you should just go, don't worry about it. The thought should be a credit card isn't $3,000. It's treat it like it's your own bank account and go never spend more than you could pay off at the end of the month. It should have an auto pay to auto pay off your entire balance. It looks good on credit. So that you can get better loan interest and other things. You can use those things, so being poor doesn't mean you shouldn't have those things. I think you should use those things, but I guess if you really can't use them responsibly in any way, I guess you're right. But
yeah, that's my issue. Is
you can better your lives by using credit cards.
You can.
And only that.
I don't know if most poor people can. It seems really, really, really hard.